Hi everybody, welcome to another video at Abraham's Table Farm. Today is May 29th and I'm here on the pasture to show you what's been going on out here. It's been 2 weeks since I made a video, and that's because we are really busy and a little bit short-staffed, and that has posed a significant challenge. Getting a little behind on some of the work in the garden and everything generally, little things are falling off, and that's a bad sign this early in the spring because if you get behind early in the season, it's really hard to stay caught up. Everything keeps growing, the weeds keep growing, the problems don't get better. And so it's really critical that we stay on top of things early in the season, and that has been somewhat impossible in the last couple weeks. We're a little bit short-staffed. One of our workers got hurt, is kind of laying low for a little while, and some of our workers went away for a wedding for a couple days last week, and all that together just means that we are behind schedule and we're struggling to stay on top of the work, and it's been a challenge. So if you know somebody who wants to work here, let us know. We're looking for at least one more crew person for this season. But it's been 2 weeks since I gave a video and I feel bad, so I wanted to make one real quick today. It'll just be a short one showing you what's going on. And I'm here on the pasture. Out on the pasture, our egg layers are in their mobile coop, which is right there. And they have been out on pasture for over a month. Sometime in April they went out, and they are really enjoying the green grass and laying eggs in their coop and just being comfortable out in the beautiful weather out here. But I wanted to show you where they've been. So they started over here in this beautiful green grass, and they lay their manure, and we move them frequently every day. Their coop gets moved forward and onto new ground. And we now have a flock of around 300 birds in a net fence enclosure for safety. And so every time we move that, they're onto new, fresh green grass. And we like to roll them where the grass is not so good, because their manure is really good for the ground and it helps the grass regrow afterwards. And you can see that the grass is pretty green here where they started, and they came right through this whole area here. And you can see that it's all matted down and trampled down. They do eat about a little bit of the grass, not a ton. They're not grazing animals, but they've really knocked it down everywhere that they've been. And they've eaten some of it, they've scratched and gotten bugs out of it, and they've laid a lot of manure while they're hanging out in that area. And so this ground was, I don't know, a week or two ago, and it's just getting ready to recover. So this grass has regrown and recovered. It's looking lush and green and beautiful, thick grass. And it's just starting to recover from their impact here. And then up where they are, you can see that the grass is green where they're at, but slowly getting knocked down. So that's what we like to see. These birds have rehabilitated this pasture marvelously in the last couple years of moving them around. We always look for the worst ground on the pasture and put our chickens there. And slowly we're bringing everything back to lush, beautiful green grass that can support a lot of life. That's ultimately the ideal, more life. You can see here, this is where the coop was parked in the last, I don't know, maybe a week ago or several days ago. And there's a lot of manure right there that will break down, be absorbed by the leaves of the grass, cause a lush regrowth. That spot is going to be really green in, I don't know, two, 3 weeks. Then we have where the birds are slowly getting matted down. So they were back here, they've been moved forward into this area. You can see it's still kind of standing up, but over the course of about a day or two, them walking and hunting, and they'll knock it all down and lay a bunch of manure. And then this ground where they're headed to next, I don't know how well it's going to show up on the camera, but this ground is not that good. There's my hand on the ground, very little grass coming through my fingers. The grass is hardly taller than my hand. There's these thick weeds, thick-leaved weeds. There's some goldenrod. There's some wild strawberry, and there's some bare ground showing, and just like hardly any growth, hardly like covering my hand. My hand should sink into lush green grass. And in other spots where the chickens have been, it is like that. Your hand sinks into lush green grass. But here, hardly any growth. And that's a problem. Very little photosynthesis happening, not enough leaf matter absorbing the sunlight, very little biology being stimulated down inside the ground. Very little life can be supported by this ground, both vegetative life, but then also the plants, the animals further up the food chain that eat the vegetation. So poor ground, It was minimal life support. And that's why we're bringing our chickens through, because their manure will jumpstart that. And then this will be lush green grass after they come through. So that's what we do with our chickens. We use them to rehabilitate the ground. They make delicious eggs for you, and your eating of those eggs stimulates our farm to keep going, which continues to heal ground and create more abundance and more life and more nutrition and more food for all kinds of people. So you're a part of that, and it's your bites, your eating, that keeps that cycle going, keeps us doing this work and moving the birds day after day after day to rehabilitate this ground and create more abundance and more nutrition for people. So you can actually, yeah, the chickens will be coming around through here. There's a lot of weeds down there. There's the bottom of this pasture here is pretty low, poor fertility, so they're headed that direction. They'll camp out in those areas for a little while. But I also wanted to show you our broiler chickens. They're actually in almost the same neighborhood of the pasture as the egg layers right now, because this area that you can see ahead of me between the edge of the woods and these brushy rock pile areas is an area that we haven't really put a lot of animal impact. It's just a little bit hard to get back in that corner. And so it was one of the last areas on the pasture that has not been very well rehabilitated. And so our broiler chickens are actually the heavy hitters. We bring them out to the worst parts on the pasture and we run their pens. We line them up so that there's even coverage of the ground, and we move them forward every day so they lay down a heavy dose of manure where they're at, and then they get fresh ground the next morning. So they're always on fresh ground and they're leaving behind their manure. And that manure is super highly stimulative to the ground. They lay down more manure and in a thicker, more even mat than the egg layers, who are kind of have more space to spread out and hunt and walk around. And that's because they like to hunt and move around. These birds like to lounge and just hang out in the shade of their pens. So these birds go where the worst ground is, and this was one of the worst areas. It was one of the areas we had done the least to help along. A lot of areas on the pasture we've rehabilitated. Animals have gone through multiple times over the last 5 years, and they're looking pretty good. These areas, not so much. So having the broilers come through is really critical, and we'll bring it up to snuff. And pretty soon every area on the pasture is going to be looking really good. I would say 80% of our pasture has been really transformed, and it can get better. It can continue to get better. It's amazing. It can be highly productive and sustain a tremendous amount of life and produce a lot of food as we continue to steward it properly. But yeah, there's a couple spots that haven't gotten much attention yet in these first couple of years. So that's where the broilers go. Every batch of chicks that we get in the brooder, they grow up, they spend a couple weeks in the brooder, and then they come out on pasture for 4 or 5 weeks. And we put them where the worst ground is, and that worst ground becomes great ground. And it's pretty awesome. So again, your egg eating, your chicken eating, every time you eat those products from us, you're sending us a signal to keep producing these things. Keep managing in this way. Keep rehabilitating the land. Continue to make abundance and health and diversity and beauty all over this piece of ground. So keep buying those products. Get a subscription. Eat that chicken. Eat those eggs. It's really good for you. It's the best chicken and eggs that you can find. But yeah, broilers are looking really good. These guys have a few more weeks of life before they'll go off to the butcher, and they're just hanging out, very comfortable, very happy. In the last week, though, we have had a predator show up that we've never had before. I can show you on the ground where it happened, but these pens have always kept the birds completely safe. They've been comfortable. We've never really had any kind of predators able to breach these pens, and that's been great. But there is one type of predator that can, and that is certain animals in the weasel family can get in there if they're super determined. We've never had that problem until a few days ago. So right there, you can see that dug out spot maybe. I don't know if you can see it very well on the camera. This hole was under the edge of the pen. Something had dug under the bottom edge of the pen and gotten in and killed a couple chickens. And it did it 2 nights in a row. You can see the puff of feathers right there where a death happened. So this is where the pens were a couple days ago, and at night something was digging under, probably a weasel. and killing a chicken. And we knew that that was not going to stop on its own, so we've actually brought Jukel out the last couple nights and tied him up by the pens, and that seems to be enough. He's eager to help out on the farm, and sometimes that's really annoying, but when you have a job for a dog to do, like to hang out at night near the pens and give his presence, it's super helpful. And since we've been tying him up here at night, there have been no predators or evidence of any activity around the pens, which is great. So thank you, Jukel. It's important for us to keep the predator-prey balance in check. So if you think about it, in nature there's always a balance between the predator and the prey, and by bringing in 300 chickens into this spot, we're dramatically increasing the prey animals that are around, and so the balance should bring in more predators to hunt those chickens and birds. And so predators do arrive, like weasels looking for food, and if they can find it, they will flourish and grow. And so what we can do is either just fight those predators and keep them out with hard barriers, boundaries, like the boundaries of these pens, or we can bring in our own predator animal, a dog, which is a canine, a hunting animal, and have him reside in the same area. And that's one of the really beautiful things about domesticated dogs. Domesticated predators live with us, in harmony with us, with a relationship with us, but they maintain that balance and they keep the space occupied by a predator, so other wild predators will not come to this area to hunt. So we love to have a mix of predators and prey, and dogs are a really wonderful animal in that way because they maintain the predator-prey balance, but they are respectful of the prey and cooperative with the humans in order to create abundance. It's great to have that fierce predator energy turned towards protection. That's what we want to see everywhere, is a fierce fighting energy turned towards protection of the weak for the growth of life everywhere. So, we're beating the weasels. Jukel is helping us beat the weasels for now. The chickens are comfortable and happy, sitting in the shade, eating, drinking. The egg layers are happy, moving around, laying eggs, eating green grass. We have these gravity bins full of feed that we get from a local farmer. We get organic feed, custom mixed by the guy down the way. And then he can auger it into those, and we can wheel them right out to the pasture and feed in place with very little work, and just keep everything really efficient and close by, and everything mobile on wheels or just rolling around to hit different spots and give them rest and adjust our management wherever we want. So that's what's happening on the pasture. Lots of birds. We've got another batch of chicks in the brooder. They'll be coming out in a couple weeks. These guys will be going to the butcher, and then we'll be restocked on all our sizes of broilers. But then there's a lot of stuff going on in the garden as well. So let's go to the garden and see what's happening there. One more thing before we get up to the garden. I'm here in a spot where the egg layers were earlier this year, at the beginning of this year, and where their manure has already done its work. And you can see where Jukel is standing. This grass is thick, like I was saying, hands deep into grass. Very different from the grass that was over there where they're headed, where it's as thin as my hand. You know, you can lay down in this. The kids were laying down making grass angels, like snow angels in the grass, by matting it down. It's just thick and lush, and you can imagine that the cows would love this. Lots of leaf, lots of photosynthesis, lots of vegetation, lots of roots underneath stimulating the biology. Totally different here where the chickens have been, and that's the kind of transformation that this work can do, and that your eating can encourage and stimulate. You can stimulate all kinds of different behaviors within the farming world by which food you choose to eat and what food you choose to enjoy. And this food stimulates this kind of transformation of landscapes. And it tastes better. So, all right, let's get up to the garden. Okay, here we are in the garden. This is the garden is where we are feeling most of the pinch on the work. The garden is where things can really get behind and it'd be really bad for the rest of the season. Pasture is a couple hours of chores every morning and every evening, and while there's little repairs and stuff that might get behind, it doesn't get behind in the same way that a garden gets behind. And if you've gardened, you know that. The weeds continue to grow bigger if you don't get on top of them. The plantings get behind if you don't do it, and then you're behind on your harvest, and the trellising gets bushy and you haven't a while to hack it back and get it in shape. So we got to stay on top of things in the garden, and generally that's something we're pretty good at. If you've seen our gardens, we're pretty good at staying on top of things, but this year it has been really hard because we just don't have enough people and hours in the day. And I'm very intent on not extending our hours and working crazy hours, because we will just burn out by September. So discipline is really key in the garden, for the long-term stretch of the season, for the exhaustion in the week and morale, and also for just staying on top of things. And I'm a big proponent of that. So we've been really struggling. We're trying to maintain realistic, sustainable work hours for ourselves. Key for sustainable farming, that we are sustainable in our energy output levels, but then also to get a lot of work done with reduced force. And so what we're actually doing is getting creative and being very strategic and changing the way we've done things. And we have had to really scratch our heads about this, but Daniel and I have really come together and had some discussions about how to tackle these problems. And what we're actually doing, believe it or not, is to cut back on the size of the garden by like 25%. So that feels really scary, to cut that back on production. We're only producing on an acre here, and that feeds, over 100 families. But we have determined that there's still a lot of extra production that is not being sold and being ripped out at the end of a cropping cycle. And the only way for us to survive with a smaller workforce is to reduce the size of the garden and make sure everything that we do is done better, is healthier, is growing faster, is more timely addressed. Because what we've learned over the years is that when you do things at the right time, it's much faster. Stitch in time saves 9. And so that doesn't come naturally to anybody who's a human, to stay perfectly on top of things and be super disciplined and do them right when they should. Procrastination is real for almost everybody. But we've gotten better at it over the time, and we have definitely learned that doing it on time or doing it early is so much easier than waiting a week and doing it a little bit late. The work gets bigger the longer you wait. And so what we're trying to do is make sure we do everything at the exact, precise, best moment possible, when it is the easiest and the quickest to do the job, and make sure the garden is exactly the right size to produce for our customers, and we're not wasting any activity planting crops that won't sell, cultivating crops that won't sell, trellising crops that won't sell, turning over beds from one crop to another that aren't necessary. We're compressing the garden and getting really efficient with our work. And so that's challenging, but we think we can do it. So here in the garden, I'm just going to show you some of the crops. And you can see that we have lots of greens. Baby kale here, lettuce mix here, spinach here. It's all looking lush and beautiful. Carrots coming up here. They're not that big yet. And then we have a lot of those in succession. So some things that are a little bit bigger here. Some more coming in here that is a little bigger. We have kale here, onions here, parsley here, lettuce heads there. More arugula that's getting ready, spinach that's getting ready, more carrots, all the garlic. There's just a lot of food coming in right now, tons of beautiful growth. More lettuce mix, brassicas, fennels, radishes, more lettuce mix. As we go down the row here, you can see the younger and younger plantings. So these lettuce beds are just germinating. The ones back there are being harvested. Some of them are even past their prime and they're gonna get turned under. But that's how the garden works. We got generations of things coming in. We're constantly planting. Every week we're planting more lettuce mix, more radishes, more turnips, all that stuff. And that's how it will go for the rest of the year. Yeah, tomatoes are in these high tunnels. We've just planted out most of those, and we're trying to get them up onto their trellises and stuff. That's been a big challenge, and something that's kind of slipped behind is getting the tomatoes up and ready. But once they really take off, they are bushy and grow fast, and so we really need to make sure that we get on top of that before it gets out of hand. So that's what we'll be working on in the next couple days, but we just gotta get back to work. So I'm actually gonna cut this video short here because there's a lot to do in the garden to make sure that it's on track for the rest of the summer. And yeah, lots of stuff coming in, lots of greens. CSA will probably start in the next week or two. That's another thing we've haven't kept up on. We need to communicate about that a little bit better. So if you're watching this and you're hoping to have a CSA with this year, or you've already signed up, that'll be starting in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to go into the office today and be sending out some email information about that. But yeah, even if you're not a CSA member, check the store, because like I said, lettuce, arugula, spinach, radishes, kale, tons of greens, tons of really good leafy things to cleanse your system and get you healthy. It's delicious, super fresh, way fresher than what you can get in the store. You know, we're harvesting this and getting it on your doorstep within 24 hours. It's going to last in your fridge longer. It's going to have way more flavor profile, and the nutrition, because those are linked, plummets once something is harvested. You know, if you think about it, all the vegetables that you eat, they're dead. They've been cut off from their life source. And the longer they sit on the shelf, the lower their nutritional profile is and the less flavor they have. And so the fact that we can get this food to you within 24 hours is unbelievable in its freshness, and why it's so much more nutritious and so much more flavorful for you. And it's that directness that really makes a huge difference. So we're really thankful for all of you guys who support us and who put those orders in every week and pick up at the drop sites. You make us able to continue to do this work and to take these fields. These fields were just like those pastures out there. Very dead, low productivity, low quality as far as what they could produce, and they've been transformed by a lot of compost in the last several years, balancing out all the minerals, making sure photosynthesis is happening all the time and pumping all kinds of sugars and stuff into the soil biology below to feed that. And this ground now can support a lot of life, truckloads of food every week all summer. And so that's pretty incredible. And there's still a lot more. As Daniel and I have determined, we can get more food out of every single one of these beds if we zero in and get focused and reduce the scope of how big the garden is, so that we can do the smaller amount better. And that's the strategy we're taking. So here we are 10 years into our farming, and we're still shrinking the space and doing what we have better. And you'll see over the course of this season that that's going to work. We're going to put out a ton of food on less ground than ever before. So stay tuned for that. Go place those orders. Help us by ordering that food and eating it and enjoying it with friends, and tell people about the farm and invite them over for dinner. And your eating habits have a huge impact on the landscape around you. So keep it up. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.